Here's Stone talking about the elector scheme as early as November 5th, 2020.
Any legislative body may decide on the basis of overwhelming evidence of fraud to send electors to the Electoral College who accurately reflect the president's legitimate victory in their state, which was illegally denied him through fraud.
MSNBC legal analyst Lisa Rubin points out this date, November 5th, is the very same date that pro-Trump lawyer Cleta Mitchell emailed John Eastman saying, quote, "What would you think of producing a legal memo outlining the constitutional role of state legislators in designating electors?" 4 days later, on November 9th, Eastman is circulating a memo titled "The Constitutional Authority of State Legislators to Choose Electors." One more thing. It was Mark Meadows who recruited that lawyer I mentioned, Cleta Mitchell, into the efforts to overturn the election. In this same time frame, early November, Meadows was texting with GOP lawmakers about Don Jr. about the electors plot, including texts about the scheme as early as November 4th, a day before the Stone video. By December, Meadows telling someone he had, quote, "a team on it." Joining me now is Lisa Rubin, MSNBC legal analyst, and back with me is Emily Bazelon, New York Times Magazine legal writer. Lisa, this is the thing. I don't have to be Rudy Giuliani to know a RICO case. I don't have to be a legal expert to know a large scheme and conspiracy. The fact that we now have this Roger Stone video and it lines up with other people sort of being activated in this plot, do you think that there's any chance that it just stops with those people? Because my guess in seeing this is, who knows how many people were involved in this call of this game of telephone before it got to Cleta Mitchell, before it got to Eastman. Do you think there's other people who might be sort of flushed out of the bushes because of this video?
Absolutely. And we can even see the seeds of that, Jason, in the January 6th investigation that the House did. You know, I found that email that you showed a few minutes ago in the January 6th committee's public files. That's where you also can see Rick Perry, of all people, texting with Meadows on the 4th, suggesting the same thing. And on the same day, November 5th, you see a White House speechwriter, Vince Haley, who came to the committee's attention because he worked under Stephen Miller, was part of editing the president's Stop the Steal speech and his speech at the rally on January 6th. He has that idea too, and he flushes them out in a series of his own emails to an employee at the White House Office of Presidential Personnel. Is it coincidence that all these people are coming up with this independent state legislature doctrine light theory as early as November 4th and 5th? Probably not. You know, we don't have the complete roster of who's on the Friends of Stone's text list, but my guess is that Friends of Stone and Friends of Stone start circulating and percolating this theory around that time, and it just moves outward from there.
You know, I'm a college professor at Morgan State, and if I saw a whole bunch of kids turning in a very similar paper at the same time, I might start tracing back emails to say, hey, who did this originate with? Because I'm pretty sure you guys didn't come up with this idea on your own. Emily, you know, one of the other things, I like the sort of fact that we're hearing about these other people. Cleta Mitchell is sort of, it seems, I don't know, like a modern-day Harriet Mier, another sort of crackpot lawyer that Team Trump sort of brought into their orbit. He had at one point had her on an elections committee in the federal government. She caused all sorts of problems and issues. When you have people like this involved in these sorts of schemes and plots, what are the steps to sort of bring them in? Is this the kind of person that you would, they would be disbarred, similar to Rudy Giuliani? Is this the kind of person who might be criminal charges against her? Or is this simply somebody that you would flip in order to catch a larger fish like Roger Stone or bring additional charges against Trump?
You know, the people who are lawyers who could be disciplined by the bar for taking part in these schemes, like that's something that people should be concerned about. I'm not sure that Mitchell rises to that level, but certainly that has been true for some of the other lawyers involved, and that's something the profession can do to kind of protect itself. She also could be someone who the Georgia prosecutors or the Department of Justice is talking to in terms of what she knows, particularly since she was obviously in direct contact with Eastman, who we know has already been indicted. And, you know, I think it's just worth reminding ourselves what they were talking about. They were talking about the idea that, like, we all go vote, somebody wins in the state, that winner gets the Electoral College votes. Oh, no, wait a second. We're going to have the state legislature make some decision that there was fraud, and so they're going to pick the winner instead. That's just not how American democracy works. It's just a really serious overturning of the will of the people that they were discussing here.
And it's also very telling because, again, the timeline is you're saying this before it was announced. Right? You're anticipating, this is the person who's saying, well, I lost the game because the field was bad. Well, you haven't even started playing yet. The game hasn't been called. So clearly your intent is to make sure it leans your way regardless of what actually happened. Lisa, I want to play you some sound from Cassidy Hutchinson testifying about what Trump said in this case and get your thoughts on the other side.
Is it your understanding that President Trump asked Mark Meadows to speak with Roger Stone and General Flynn on January 5th?
That's correct. That is my understanding.
And Ms. Hutchinson, is it your understanding that Mr. Meadows called Mr. Stone on the 5th?
I'm under the impression that Mr. Meadows did complete both a call to Mr. Stone and General Flynn the evening of the 5th.
Now, we can't automatically say, Lisa, that anybody who was on a phone call the day before the terrorist attack of January 6th is inherently guilty. But if you know Roger Stone was there and you know Eastman was part of putting together this ridiculous plot, doesn't this also sort of draw additional lines about how many people were intimately involved? You can't say, I had no idea what was going to happen if all of these people were involved in a series of phone calls and tags and everything else like that right before the terrorist attack, right?
Yeah, and Jason, you might have read my mind because I was thinking about that moment of Cassidy Hutchinson's testimony too, that Mark Meadows wanted to go over to the Willard Hotel. He wanted to sit in the war room. She persuaded him that that probably wasn't the best course of action. And then he relayed to her that the president had asked him to call Roger Stone that evening. The other thing that strikes me about this is the way that the fake electors plot first starts isn't the way that it finishes. It starts with a bunch of people thinking that state legislatures have to be involved. But of course, those state legislators resisted those entreaties from the president. In fact, one of the charges in the Georgia RICO suit is against Donald Trump for soliciting the then Speaker of the Georgia House, David Ralston, to convene a special session to choose their own electors. David Ralston said, thanks, but no thanks. But the fake electors plot doesn't die there. It continues. It goes into the 6th. And it's with the thought leadership of people like Roger Stone that it continues to persist up into and through the 6th itself.